Hello and welcome to the Heat Check podcast, the Miami Herald's Miami Heat podcast. I'm David Wilson, and I'm joined, as always, on the other line. He's the least happy man in the Bahamas. It's Anthony Chiang. Anthony, what's going on?
It's not that I'm not happy. I'm happy to be in the Bahamas. I'm grateful, but the weather isn't so great right now. I'm alone. I miss my family. I wish the weather was great so I can go to the lazy river. I can't do any of that. So, it's just different. It doesn't even feel like I'm in the Bahamas. I'm just in a hotel.
Are you? How many pina coladas deep are you?
0. But maybe I'll get one later. We'll see.
Anthony, it is basketball season. Training camp. We're recording this on Tuesday, so actually the first day of training camp for the Heat in Nassau, Bahamas. Anthony is at the Baha Mar resort. Pretty much
Beautiful
all week,
resort,
right?
by the way. Beautiful resort, by the way.
I've been to Atlanta. I went to the. We can talk about this later. But I went to the Bahamas
Yeah.
Bowl at Atlanta, and I stayed at Atlantis for a night there. I've not been to Baha Mar, so.
Yeah, my first time. Impressed. I'm impressed.
So anyway, basketball is back. Anthony will be down in the Bahamas for most of this week. Obviously, media day was yesterday on Monday, and it was a day all about extensions, I would say.
It's a good one. I like that.
Yeah, you like that?
You're just even saving that one all summer? Or?
I have. Well, no, because I didn't know Jimmy Butler was going to show up with his hair looking like that. But I've saved it for the pod. I could have tweeted it yesterday. I saved it for the pod. Jimmy Butler shows up with extensions. Tyler Hero talks about an extension. But in all seriousness, the real story, it's kind of the extension thing is kind of real because that still remains kind of the biggest story looming over this team, right? Is what will Tyler Hero get that deal? But largely the story is this team is very similar to what it was last year, as we've talked about a lot. I thought Bam, I was not out at media day, but obviously was following it all day. I thought Bam's kind of openness about the idea that, it's him and Tyler kind of got to be the two who step up. I thought was probably kind of maybe the most interesting thing to come out of the day, except for Jimmy Butler's hair. What was your biggest takeaway coming out of Monday?
That's a good one that both him and Tyler's agreed that they are the biggest keys to the Heat taking another step forward, even though they bring back the same roster. And that's evident because they're the two brightest young stars in the team, right? So you need them to take another leap. Yeah. But I think the thing that sticks out to me, which it's not surprising, but it just became so evident as we spoke to guys on Monday at media day. His team is the same, pretty much, except for PJ Tucker. The rotation is going to should look fairly similar. Trader, as Jimmy Butler called him. But it's going to look different. Like, it's going to be a lot of the same guys, but it's going to look different because, first of all, naturally, there's going to be a new starting four, right? Whether it's Caleb Martin, Haywood Highsmith, or the Heat goes small with Max Strus at the 4. Jimmy Butler says he does not want to play the 4.
We're going to say Jimmy Butler does not play the 4, but Max Strus is going to play the 4. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Well, but the thing is that, if Max plays the 4, then we know it's just Eric Spoelstra trying to tell, how Jimmy play the 4 without saying he's playing the 4. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. My bet is still on Caleb to start, but we'll see. Tyler Hero might start, right? That would be a big change. Yeah. That would push Max Strus out of the starting lineup, which, by the way, Max Strus yesterday was pretty clear when he said, I plan and hope to start this year. I want to be a starter. That's my goal. And I think we played well when I was in the starting lineup. So it's not like Max is just going to get up that starting spot easily and just will, hand it off to Tyler. That's going to be a competition. 3, we've talked about this summer, guys are on Bam to shoot more, take more shots. Yep. Pat Riley challenged him to be, consistently take maybe 15 shots a game. I think Bam averaged 13 shots a game last year. Bam said on Monday his goal is to take 18 shots a game. So, we've all heard this before, right? We'll see it. We'll see if Bam actually takes on that, bigger scoring role. And then the bench rotation. Omar Yurtseven, will he be in the rotation? He made a case yesterday to anybody who would listen, basically at media day, that he thinks he can play alongside Bam. They're a lot of the same guys, but it could look pretty different next year just because of the rotation tweaks. Younger guys growing into bigger roles, whether it's Bam, whether it's Tyler, whether it's Max or Caleb. It's going to look a little different. And I think that became really, really clear at media day.
Yeah, they are in an interesting spot where, no, they did not change a lot of the roster, but whether it is challenges from the coaching staff or management. They either expect guys to be slightly different players this year, or just like you said, young guys knowing that, just the natural improvement. Jimmy Butler is kind of the only guy you look at this roster and you say like he can be the exact same guy he was last year, and this team will be fine, right? Like, you can run down the list. Obviously, we just talked about Bam and Tyler as guys who know they need to take a leap, and coaches and players, they all talk about the ways that those guys can improve. You can all the young guys, Caleb Martin, Max Strus, your guys you just mentioned, all guys who really kind of had their first taste of like really meaningful NBA basketball last year. They all had varying degrees of experience before, but last year was really the year they solidified themselves. And even in Yurt's case, didn't even really have that, but like guys who kind of asserted themselves as like they are NBA players here to stay, got multi-year deals, a lot of it. And then Kyle Lowry, which is one guy we haven't mentioned yet. Obviously, the challenge from Pat Riley about him getting in better shape. The Heat obviously expect that. There was a lot of very close Instagram watching of what he was posting all summer. Interesting to hear him kind of come back at media day and kind of brush some of those ideas away. Yeah. But again, like everyone across the board except Jimmy Butler, I think there's an expectation that they should come back better this year. Obviously, it doesn't work like that, guys. No, development is never linear, and obviously a guy like Kyle Lowry at his age, it's kind of hard to necessarily bank on him becoming a totally different guy. But the Heat, I think, expect pretty much everyone on this roster to be better than they were last year, whether it is just based on experience or improvement or, adding different things to their games like star players are supposed to do.
Yeah, I think that's all right. And I think we should get into Kyle. You kind of mentioned there briefly Kyle Lowry's comments, which I think was a big part of media day, right? That, we all knew what the storyline around Kyle Lowry was. His conditioning, will he be in shape? Will he be in better shape? I, for one, never thought Kyle Lowry was in bad shape. I must say, like, I thought a lot of the talk was overblown because of the hamstring injury. The regular season, no one talked. We know Kyle Lowry's body type, right? We know that he's had that body for his pretty much entire NBA career. No one spoke about whether he's in shape or was in good conditioning or bad conditioning. He was fine. He was basically as advertised when he was on the court in the regular season.
We were really. I remember us talking at the beginning of the year. Was he an all-star before the injury happened?
Like I feel like he was exactly forgot.
Needed.
Yeah, and yes, in the playoffs, he was not himself. He tweaked a hamstring like in the third game of the first round. He missed a lot of time, came back, wasn't the same because of his hamstring. It wasn't because he wasn't in good shape. So that's just my opinion, but he was obviously asked about Pat Riley's comment about getting into better shape, world-class shape, and Kyle Lowry's quote was interesting. He said, "It's whatever." Honestly, he has his opinion, right? Everyone has their opinion, and it doesn't do anything for me. All I do is motivate myself. I always motivate myself. You rarely see guys kind of that dismissive toward Pat Riley. Honestly, I don't even remember a guy being that dismissive to Pat Riley. Did he mean it in a negative way? We don't know, right? We're not in Kyle Lowry's head, but he obviously wasn't like didn't seem like he was super thrilled by the comment. So it's just, it was definitely interesting to hear Kyle's response to everything. Kyle looks good. I'm sure he's gonna be a big part of what this team does this season again, as obviously. But just kind of the dialogue now around Kyle Lowry and the Heat, it's not the best because of that comment and kind of where things stand right now.
Yeah, I think the thing with Kyle Lowry, it's like, he's gonna be a Hall of Famer probably based on playing the style he plays. That with that, he's had that same body. Go back to when he was at Villanova, and he looked pretty similar. And obviously worked for him. He's always kind of been doubted because of that a little bit, right? He was not a highly drafted guy, bounced around a lot of different teams before kind of I think it was Houston. He finally broke out, kind of became like a fringe all-star guy, and then obviously went to another level in Toronto. But I think there was like with anyone, you look at a player like that and your natural instinct is going to be, if this guy was in like kick-ass shape, how good could he be? And I think the hope when he got to Miami is obviously the Heat is famous for conditioning tests and all that kind of stuff. And I think the idea was if he showed up, like, he's how old is he now? 35?
36, I think.
36. Yeah. Like, to play, 36 years old, to keep playing at 36, you got to be in incredible shape. Yeah. And I think the hope was like, if he did that, he would kick into another gear and extend his window here for a couple more years. And like like you said at the beginning, he was awesome at the beginning of the year. Kind of exactly what this team was missing from a year before. Not scoring at a super high level, but he was up there in assists. He's obviously a good defender still. When he's healthy, and he's giving them another 3-point shooter, which they really kind of needed at various points. Year before, and then the injury, I think, kind of, like you said, skewed a lot of the perceptions about him. If he comes back and he's the guy he was at the beginning of last year, and he can maintain that through an 82-game season, obviously not playing all 82 games, but go from day one to the end of the year and be that same guy in the playoffs, I think the conditioning stuff will be overblown. But again, he's 36, coming off an injury. The point guards tend to fall off a cliff when they fall off. So I think people who are clamoring for him to get in better shape, it's fair. But like you said, it shouldn't be a surprise that he's not looking like, what was it? It was like someone was like, he's not Tyler Hero, obviously. Like it's not a surprise he's going to look kind of like this. How do you think he looks?
Yeah, it's a different body type, right? I think he looks fine. I think it looks very similar to last year, and that's not a bad. Like he was, again, if he's healthy, he would have been exactly what he needed in that Boston series. A guy who could operate in the pick and roll and kind of shoot in that little pocket there off the screen and pull up.
His struggles in the playoffs were so much shooting, and
but the hamstring was a huge part of it.
That's hamstring. Yeah. That's not fitness. That's like you don't have your legs.
And an argument could be made, okay, if he was in better shape, he wouldn't have gotten injured. We don't know that. You could say that, and maybe that's true, but we have no idea whether that played a role in tweaking his hamstring. Like guys LeBron James tweaked his hamstring or growing a couple years ago. LeBron's in great shape. Like I don't know how much that had to do with Kyle Lowry's injury. So I mean, it was an interesting comment that made headlines, right? He was a little bit dismissive, but I think both sides kind of understand what the common goal is, and I'm sure they'll be fine. But it just, I guess it's not what you expected to hear from Kyle when he was, when we asked him to respond to that, just because we haven't heard many guys with that tone when addressing Pat.
Yeah, I can't remember anyone ever doing something like that with Pat Riley. Like even LeBron after he left, and Riley, you don't mess with the Godfather, right?
Yeah, and maybe Pat likes it. I don't know. Maybe Pat, but Pat, like
maybe he does.
He loves that kind of riling guys up. No pun intended. So maybe he likes that. Don't shake your head at me. Maybe he likes that Kyle Lowry feels a certain way. I don't know, but point is, I think Kyle's gonna be fine as long as he stays healthy. He's gonna be essential for the Heat this season as far as reaching their ceiling as a team.
So I've got the Barry did live updates. Barry Jackson, our colleague, did kind of live updates as went to the podium. I think a pretty good roundup, just like if you want the quick hits on all the stories. Obviously, you and Barry broke out bigger stories out of the day as well. But just if you're looking for this kind of all the bits of news, that's a good place to start. Tyler Hero mentioned one of his goals is to be an all-star, which is not surprising. So if the Heat has 3 all-stars this year, do you think it's more likely that the third guy is Tyler Hero or Kyle Lowry? You're muted.
3, 2, 1. Probably Tyler Hero because he's going to put up bigger scoring numbers. And usually that's what gets you in the All-Star game. It's not the 12 points, 5 rebounds, and 7 assists, right? It's the averaging 21 points on 47% shooting and 39% shooting on 3. So I would give the edge to Tyler Hero.
Yeah, I think the narrative has gone on. Like we said, there was kind of a narrative case for Tyler Hero at the start of last year before the injury, and obviously that's gone now in year 2.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Other big takeaways from the day. You touched on it a little bit. Jimmy Butler not playing the four. What did you make of that?
I thought it was funny. That's just Jimmy being Jimmy.
Is that just okay? That's just all shtick.
Well, I don't think he wants to play the four. And he said it again today on Tuesday, the first day of practice in the Bahamas. He said, "I hope there are four guys competing for the power forward spot, so I don't have to do it." He does not want to play the four, and
Why does he not
that's
want to play the four? I kind of don't get it.
Yeah, I don't understand either. But it's a thing. LeBron apparently, I was told by other writers who cover the team at that point, LeBron was the same thing when like they wanted to. LeBron didn't want to play the four. He didn't want to be labeled as a four, even though he was being used as a four in a lot of those minutes. He did not want to play the four. So I think Udonis was asked about that today, kind of like why guys don't want to play the four, and he's like, well, it's just a different style of basketball. All these guys are thought of as guards.
I get if you don't want to play the four. I get if you don't want to play the four in 1997, where like you're getting punched in the nose like 8 times a game, and you score 12 points and get 17 rebounds. But that has not been the four in the NBA for a decade. Four has not been what the four is basically since LeBron James switched to the four in Miami.
Yeah,
totally changed what his position is.
I agree. I think whether Jimmy wants it or not, I don't think it's smart to probably play him at the four for 35 minutes a game because it's going to wear him down, right? Because it's just a more physical style he has to play.
Yes, you do have to go up against bigger.
You're going to have to be going up against bigger guys. You have to be going in there to get more rebounds, and that's to be more of an emphasis. So I think it's better for Jimmy not to play like all of his minutes at the four. But I do think late in games, the Heat and all they're going to put their 5 best players in the court. And a lot of times it's going to be Jimmy, Bam, Kyle, Tyler, and Max. And Jimmy in that lineup is going to be playing the four. So he probably won't start at the four, but he'll probably end a lot of games at that spot, whether he likes it or not.
Yeah, it's positionless basketball, obviously.
Yeah, and I think that was another storyline of yesterday. Like I asked Caleb Martin, we keep asking you about replacing PJ Tucker and starting at the four and what adjustment you have to make. But do you feel like it's just overblown just because of the way you guys play? And he's like, yeah, totally. I might be guarding point guards as much as I'm guarding forwards.
Yeah.
It's just the way we play. We switch everything, and yeah, I'll be having to do a couple different things, but for the most part, it's not like I'm guarding, a four all game. That's just not the style we play. And we help so much that I'm usually not an island in the post whenever I am guarding a bigger player. So it shouldn't be an issue. So I think a lot of the guys think it's a little bit overblown because, like you said, the Heat do play a lot of positionless basketball and they switch so much that, it's not the traditional thinking of, okay, we need a four to guard fours.
Yeah.
It's not the way they play.
Well, yeah, I mean, most teams in the NBA now, if you look at the way they're the lineups for good teams, there's a big man, there's 2 forwards, and there's 2 perimeter guys, or a true point guard in some teams' cases, 2 wings, or really 3 wings / forwards, and a big man. It's the center is kind of the only position, and I guess point guard if you're gonna play that way. Yeah. And the Heat don't even play that way. They do a little bit more with Kyle Lowry, obviously, but Jimmy Butler is going to be the 4 and the point guard, just like LeBron James is the 4 and the point guard, just like Giannis is sometimes the 4 and the point guard. That's just the way stars work. The 4, if you're not a center, the 4 is it's kind of just like your defensive position in a lot of ways. It's your biggest, strongest, most athletic guy. And then those guys also a lot of times end up being the point guard, basically also. So it feels very overblown to me.
Yeah, and one point to that is I was saying to Caleb yesterday media day a little bit alone, away from the scrum, and he was saying he made a good point. PJ for all he did last year was never a guy that was gonna get a rebound and push it, right?
Right.
That just wasn't his game. If the Heat start a lineup of Kyle, Tyler, Jimmy, Caleb, Bam, all 5 of those guys can get a rebound and push it on the court. That's gonna be pretty unique, just in that sense. And he's like, I don't do everything Jimmy does, right? I mean, PJ does, and I'm not going to try to copy him because he's great at what, his role. But I can do some stuff that he can't do. And that's one of the things, and also attacking closeouts, right? If they try to close out on the corner 3 or something, Caleb has the ability to make a play off the dribble and the athleticism to finish that PJ just didn't. So Caleb will bring something unique to that spot.
Yeah, and he and Jimmy, in a lot of ways, I still think complement each other well, where Jimmy is big and strong and physical, and probably not quite the athlete he used to be, although still probably an underrated athlete, honestly. And Caleb Martin is one of the freakiest athletes in the NBA. He's basically LeBron James when he dunks.
I mean, we've covered that. Yeah. See, I gotta tell him that actually. I think.
You should tell him that. Yeah.
You remind me. You remind me of Caleb Martin. You know who you remind me of? LeBron James.
Speaking of power forward, I guess we should quickly hit on Jae Crowder. Like seemingly being very, very available, not going to be in camp with the Suns. Obviously, that he was a name tied to the Heat a lot throughout the summer, particularly before I think Kevin Durant became available. He was like a name that I think Heat fans were really interested in. Any chance the Heat would circle back there, or would that be around New Year's once they kind of know what they're doing if Jay's still available?
Yeah, I do know that there's definite mutual interest, right? Yeah. I know Jay likes it in Miami. That's well documented. He spends a lot of his off seasons here. He liked his experience here. The Heat would take Jay back in a heartbeat if they could, right? He feels a need for them, and they liked him when he was here. He was very important to that run to the finals. But the numbers are just tough to make this work. He's on an expiring contract of $10.2 million, so essentially, to get it done, you have to trade Duncan Robinson.
Yeah.
And I don't know why Phoenix would do that and eat that money when Jay's on an expiring deal and you're taking on longer, money for a couple more years with Duncan. Would you attach a first-round pick to that? I don't know if the Heat want to do that, because then you're dealing an asset away for Jay, who would fit a need, but he's also an older player. And the Heat have been in this mode of trying to stock up assets for a huge move. So I don't know if this is the move to do it and waste a pick. So it's just tough because, if he could get it done by trading 2 minimum contracts or even 3 minimum contracts, then I think they'd probably do it. But even 3 minimum contracts is not enough. And would Phoenix even do a 3-for-1 trade for Jae Crowder? I don't know. Maybe they like one of the Heat's young players, but it's just the numbers are, and the salary matching, it's just very tricky with this type of deal, just because of Heat's roster and the way the salaries are constructed, and then Jay being, that number of $10.2 million.
Yeah, it's also just kind of interesting to me that he's so widely available, considering.
I didn't expect that.
I mean, I know he kind of fell out of favor for them. I don't think was playing a ton in the playoffs, and not well. I think he really kind of fell off toward the end of last year. But yeah, like it's not like a kind of. So Bojan got traded last week, Bojan Bogdanovic, and it was like not a big haul for Utah. And like, obviously the Heat weren't interested, or like they could have made a similar trade probably, but like I thought
that would have been interesting for them.
I thought a guy like that would have made a lot of sense. Yeah. And then, when you're trying to like pick apart a tanking team, scrap a tanking team for parts, it's easier to get a guy than it is when like Phoenix is not just going to give Jae Crowder away when they're they're not interested in a bunch of future first round picks. Their window is now, at least as far as we can tell. Maybe that loss at the end of last year like is a turning point for them, but right now it's going to be tough.
My feeling around all this is like, I don't think the Heat need to make a move right now. I think they can try to
they feel pretty good about what they have.
Yeah, and what I mean, I think they're fine. They're going to be a good regular season team. I don't think the power forward issue is that big of a problem in the regular season when you're just going up against, most teams don't have a power forward that can make you pay for that, right? Yeah, if you're matching up against Milwaukee in the playoffs, that's a problem. But the Heat have like 6 months until they have to worry about that. So I think for now, you see what you have, you evaluate, and maybe someone else becomes available between now and the trade deadline in a few months. And maybe in January, February, when more guys are eligible to be traded, they make that move. But right now, I just don't feel the urgency from the Heat that they're going to try everything they can to get Jae Crowder. As much as they would love him, I think they're going to wait. They're going to take a wait-and-see approach and kind of see what this roster can do early on.
All right. Anything we didn't hit on from Media Day that you feel like we should mention here?
Eric Spoelstra wasn't there.
Yeah, I guess we didn't even mention that.
Congrats to the Spoelstra family.
Yes.
Yeah.
Congrats
He also missed the first day of practice on Tuesday. So Chris Quinn was the substitute teacher on the first day, which is kind of unique. On Chris Quinn's 39th birthday.
Happy birthday, Chris Quinn.
Yeah. But Eric Spoelstra is expected back on Wednesday. So he'll be back. But yeah, he was not there for me today. He was not at the first practice, so we have yet to speak to Coach Bolsher so far.
First day of practice down in the Bahamas. Anything of note? First day of practice. It's like kind of the first day of school, right?
Yeah, it's like everything was great. Everyone's playing great. It was great to get back with the guys. The cliche. I mean, Udonis Haslam, he gave a nickname or labeled his final season the last ride.
Okay.
So there's that.
Good.
Yeah. And then he said the last ride in my Chevy and left. Which is a very, very Miami thing. I think I tweeted it right after. The last ride in my Chevy. But yeah, I mean, you could tell Udonis a little bit emotional talking about it just because it is his final first day of camp, right? And he's done a lot of reflecting. He was like, I've thought back to 2003, my first camp, and how different things are now. How different I am now.
See how long his shorts were.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. There's pictures of back then of him and like Dwayne Wade dressed like such a different style.
I know, it's crazy.
Yeah, and it's just been an emotional time for Udonis, as he's said many times, with his dad passing away last year, and just kind of trying to cope with that and trying to make the decision of whether he wanted to come back and fulfill what his dad wanted for him and all that. So I think it's just all sinking in for Udonis. And he spoke after the first day of practice, and you could tell that he was trying to really embrace the moment.
What UD played before? Oh, how about that?
He might have to if there's an injury or two. I mean, it's like
he's kind of funny. Last year was like the most he played. I felt like in like a long time, right?
But because there was a stretch where like PJ was out and they were like starting KZ, I think, and then KZ didn't play well.
Yeah,
and
obviously
so
there's
like just put UD in there.
Yeah.
And UD was. I remember like UD. There was one point like he took a charge. He made like a layup. Gave him like 5 solid minutes. You remember that game in Miami? Like the crowd went crazy.
Yeah.
I wonder
if we're gonna get more moments like that this year. We're like, knowing it's the last year. I'm sure knowing it's, we know how like psychotic he is, like knowing he knows it's the last year and he wants to be able to contribute a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like, like leave it all on the floor basically in the weight room, all that kind of stuff. I wonder if we'll get a couple more of obviously, like I assume the last home game of the regular season is going to be UD Day, but
unless the Heat are fighting for a playoff spot.
Yeah, it's going to make it tricky, right? It's not like it could be like Dwayne Wade Day, like where it was like he was your sixth man and like a key part of the team. Like it'll be an interesting last ride. I think it's going to be an underrated story. I think league wide, it won't be obviously here in Miami, but
Miami will be a big deal.
Yeah, but it'll be interesting to see what kind of reception it gets throughout the year.
One funny UD comment from today that I just remembered. Someone asked him about like Jimmy not wanting to play the 4, and he goes, "I'll play the 4. I just want to play. I don't care where I play." So like you're right. Like Jimmy UD doesn't care. Like he'll play the 4, he'll play the 3, he'll play the 2. He doesn't care.
Yeah.
He just wants to get out there and play. And I think, obviously he's not going to be probably a consistent member of the rotation, but there will be he'll have his moments because Eric Spoelstra is good about that, of really trying to make that. We saw with Dwayne Wade, right? Like trying to make that final season special. And they'll find moments to make that happen, especially in Miami.
All right, I think that about wraps things up. You can follow Anthony on Twitter at Anthony_Chiang. He's down in the Bahamas this week for the first couple of days of Heat training camp. Then he'll be back in Miami, and by the time we record next week, we'll have a preseason game to talk about. Right? I think they open things up on October 4th, next Tuesday. So, we'll come back next week, talk about what we learned from the first preseason game, if we learn anything. But
a lot of starting lineup talk. I'm predicting in the future, like who started that game, what does it mean? Like we're gonna have a lot of that this year.
Yeah. Oh, we got a lot of shows to fill throughout this season. You can follow me on Twitter at DBWilson2. Hockey's back, basketball's back, football's going on. Although I think Anthony would rather ignore what's going on. Coral Gables right now. But how about those Dolphins?
The Dolphins. I heard the NFL started. I didn't see that college football started.
All right. That'll wrap things up. Thanks as always for listening, and we'll talk to you guys next week.